The generally accepted chronology of antiquity and the Middle Ages is significantly distorted and needs revision. This is the main idea of Russian academician Anatoly Fomenko and his new chronology. Despite the scientific community's rejection of his concept, he continues to assert that medieval events were artificially shifted back by several hundred or even thousands of years into the distant past. Years of criticism from historians and accusations of promoting pseudoscience have not prevented Anatoly Fomenko from remaining a full member of the Russian Academy of Sciences and teaching at Moscow State University. On his birthday, Gazeta.ru publishes an interview with the academician, where he reaffirms his core ideas. Anatoly Timofeyevich, do you still give lectures at the Faculty of Mechanics and Mathematics? How do you spend your free time?
Yes, I regularly teach the compulsory course, Differential Geometry and Topology at Moscow State University, as well as specialized courses on modern geometry and its applications, such as Introduction to Topology and Symplectic Geometry and Geometry and Topology of Hamiltonian Systems. I have little free time. I am working on the theory of integrable Hamiltonian systems, mentoring students and graduate students. A significant part of my focus is on developing mathematical methods for analyzing chronicles and other narrative texts.
You are known for creating the new chronology, a concept of radically revising world history. Do you still adhere to this concept?
Yes, I do. The new chronology is an important scientific direction discovered in the 20th century by professional mathematicians Anatoly Fomenko, Gleb Nosovsky, and Tatiana Fomenko. It turns out that the commonly accepted chronology and history of antiquity and the Middle Ages is significantly distorted and requires revision up to and including the 17th century. This conclusion was reached based on new mathematical, statistical, and astronomical methods developed by the authors of the new chronology. As a result, it was revealed that almost all surviving historical written sources actually describe events that took place between the 11th and 17th centuries. However, when the global chronology was being established in the 16th–17th centuries, a significant portion of these sources was incorrectly dated. Consequently, medieval events described in them were artificially shifted back by several hundred or even thousands of years, creating an illusory mirage, a phantom reflection of events from the 11th–17th centuries. This phantom was named antiquity.
Who created this phantom?
The global chronology of antiquity was established relatively recently, in the 16th–17th centuries, by medieval chronologists Joseph Scaliger and Dionysius Petavius, and it was cemented by their followers. In the foundational works of Scaliger and Petavius, the chronology of antiquity is presented as a table without any scientific justification. Its basis was declared to be church tradition, but its origins cannot be traced back earlier than the 16th century. Chronology, as the art of calculating dates, is essentially a branch of applied mathematics.
So, were Scaliger and Petavius mathematicians?
They considered themselves mathematicians, but the problem is that, at that time, mathematical and astronomical methods were still quite crude and imperfect. This led to major errors in Scaliger's version of chronology. Only in our time have mathematics and astronomy advanced enough to allow the development of new, objective methods for confidently dating ancient events. As a result, in Scaliger-Petavius's version, we uncovered erroneous shifts in true dates, pushing them hundreds or even thousands of years into the distant past. It is important to understand that chronology is the backbone of all ancient history. Changing its backbone radically alters the entire structure of history. Changing dates changes everything. Our new chronology significantly affects our understanding of antiquity. It turns out that humanity's written history begins only in the 10th–11th centuries.
As is well known, the new chronology has been rejected by the scientific community. From your perspective, what exactly do those who reject it fail to understand?
The new chronology has not been rejected. The scientific community is not monolithic. Many aggressively oppose the new chronology, but there are modern scholars who actively support and develop certain aspects of it. For example, our official website, New Chronology, provides information on this topic. Moreover, doubts about the accuracy of Scaliger's chronology, created in the 16th century and forming the basis of modern history textbooks, did not arise just today.
When did they arise?
These doubts emerged immediately after Scaliger's chronology was published and forcibly introduced into public consciousness. In the 16th century, Professor de Arcia of the University of Salamanca opposed Scaliger's chronology. Later, Jesuit historian and archaeologist Jean Hardouin also challenged it, as did the renowned scientist Isaac Newton. German private lecturer Robert Baldauf, whose works were published in 1902–1903, and English historian Edwin Johnson also questioned it. And many others. However, the first researcher to broadly and radically raise the issue of scientifically justifying chronology was the remarkable Russian scholar and polymath Nikolai Morozov. He proposed and partially substantiated the hypothesis that Scaliger's chronology of antiquity was artificially extended beyond reality. He analyzed Scaliger's chronology from supposed deep antiquity to the 6th century AD and pointed out the need for a radical correction of dates. Nevertheless, Morozov did not push beyond the 6th century AD, believing that the currently accepted chronology from the 6th to the 17th centuries was more or less accurate. However, this assumption turned out to be mistaken.
Where was Morozov mistaken?
As we have shown using our new dating methods, Scaliger's chronology needs correction not only up to the 6th century, but all the way to the 17th century, which, by the way, is no coincidence. It coincides with Scaliger's own era. We argue that only after the mid-17th century does the currently accepted chronology become more or less reliable. Before the 17th century, the true dates of many significant events were artificially shifted into the past by approximately 100 years, 330 years, 1050 years, or 1800 years. To restore true history, Scaliger's datings must now be shifted forward by these respective amounts.
The main discussions about the new chronology took place in the early 2000s. Have you gathered any new evidence since then to support your theory? If so, can you provide examples?
Interest in the new chronology has not waned. Today, active discussions mainly take place on the Internet. Our website, New Chronology, provides numerous links to heated debates, critiques, and responses to criticism. In 2019, a large new chronology museum opened in Yaroslavl, housed in a historic mansion of the Karakan princes. The exhibition spans 3 floors and attracts many visitors. We continue our research, and new findings are published in our latest books. These books are regularly released by AST, one of the largest publishing houses, and enjoy great popularity.
Do you really believe that modern history has been falsified? If so, who falsified it and why?
The chronology of ancient and medieval history has been falsified. An important clarification is needed here. We do not share the view of some scholars who claim that all ancient literature was simply fabricated in the Middle Ages. That idea is deeply incorrect. The version of history we know today was not invented from scratch. We argue that the major ancient authors, Herodotus, Livy, Homer, Xenophon, actually described real events from the 12th–17th centuries. Their texts are not fictional fabrications, they genuinely attempted to document the past. However, these texts were later subjected to biased editing and censorship in the 17th–18th centuries. The censors of the Reformation era edited these authors to fit a particular narrative. One of their primary actions was introducing Scaliger's incorrect dates, artificially pushing the events described by ancient writers deep into the past.
So, in your opinion, when did antiquity actually take place?
Antiquity was the period between the 12th and 16th centuries. Therefore, when reading ancient authors today, one must constantly ask, when and where did these events actually take place? The events themselves were real, but as it turns out, they often occurred much later than traditionally believed, sometime between the 10th and 17th centuries, and often in completely different geographic locations than currently assumed.
Why did the censors edit history? And what do you mean by fitting a particular narrative?
The goal of the censors was to create a new model of the ancient world, radically altering our perception of the past. The reasons behind this effort are crucial, and we have uncovered them in our research. We explain them in detail in our books. One of the main motives was the desire to erase the history of a vast empire that existed between the 13th and 16th centuries, an empire that spanned Eurasia, Europe, parts of Africa, and even the Americas. This empire was later fragmented in the early 17th century due to the upheaval of the Reformation. Today, we know this empire under many different names, such as the Ancient Roman Empire, the Empire of Charlemagne, the Empire of Charles V, the Holy Roman Empire of the German nation, the Arab Caliphate, the Habsburg Empire, the Mongol Empire. All of these were, in fact, different names for the same empire, which collapsed in the early 17th century. At the end of the 16th century, the time of troubles began in the empire. The Western European governors openly separated from the center, the Russian metropolis. The rebellion grew and reached an unprecedented scale. The empire fractured. To justify their claims to the seized power in the empire's provinces, the usurpers rebels in Western Europe and the Romanov usurpers in Russia, the former metropolis, rewrote history. The Great, i.e. Mongol Empire, was deliberately erased from chronicles, and many important events were intentionally pushed far into the past. It was precisely for this purpose that the false Scaligerian chronology was created, artificially extending the dates of many events from the 14th–16th centuries.
So, in your view, this was a way to eliminate imperial ambitions?
The very imperial idea began to be condemned as chauvinistic. Russia, in particular, was constantly suspected of attempts to restore the empire. Turkey was also disliked. This process is familiar to us from recent history, with the aggressive and rebellious collapse of the USSR, an analogous split with similar consequences. For example, Arabs came to believe they had their own Arab empire. On paper, the Germans were granted their own Holy Roman Empire. The Chinese had their own Celestial Empire. The Italians, their Roman Empire. And so on. These empires were supposedly entirely different, existing in various historical eras. Thus, a single great empire was multiplied on paper, into several local small empires. The order to rewrite ancient and recent history in a particular way served purely political purposes, which were crucial both for Western European reformers and their protégés in Russia, the Romanovs. This explains the coordinated historical falsification, which unfolded as a practically unified program across different countries.
Is it true that you critically assess the accuracy of radiocarbon dating? What exactly earned this method your disapproval?
The radiocarbon method, in its current state, has an accuracy of plus or minus 1,000 to 2,000 years for samples estimated to be no more than 1,000 years old. Therefore, it is currently unsuitable for dating historical samples younger than 2,000 years. In other words, the method can say little about the chronology of events from the last 2 millennia. The radiocarbon method requires at least a new independent calibration, without relying on the erroneous Scaligerian chronology. Other physical dating methods are even cruder and, consequently, currently cannot provide reliable dating for objects up to 2,000 years old. The Scaligerian chronology has explicitly or implicitly influenced the calibration of archaeological and even physical dating methods, including radiocarbon and thermoluminescence dating. This further questions the applicability of the method in its current form for dating historical artifacts. Moreover, as some archaeologists acknowledge, there is a deeply flawed practice of physical laboratories being informed in advance about archaeologists' approximate expectations regarding a sample's age before performing radiocarbon dating. This creates a vicious cycle.
Does dendrochronology work?
The situation with dendrochronology is even more complicated. According to archaeologists themselves, all 6 main chronologies, built using different types of trees, have a gap around the year 1000 AD. This means that none of them can be continuously extended backward beyond the 10th century AD. Therefore, the method is effectively inapplicable to earlier historical periods. Moreover, there are also serious problems even within the 10th–17th century range, which we discuss in detail, for example, in our book, New Chronology of Russia.
In 1984, radiocarbon dating was performed on ancient Egyptian monuments. However, in 2014, a number of ancient Egyptian sites, including the Pyramid of Menkaure and the Sphinx Temple in Giza, were dated using another method, thermoluminescence. These dates once again aligned with the reign of the pharaohs. How would you explain this from your perspective?
The issues here are even more serious than with radiocarbon dating. In archaeology, thermoluminescence dating is primarily used for dating ancient ceramics and other fired clay objects, such as terracotta, kilns, bricks, as well as burned flint tools, hearthstones, artificial glass, and slag. This method requires calibration, which is based on the assumption that the radiation background has remained constant over time. However, no studies have yet confirmed this assumption. Moreover, identifying past radiation fluctuations requires independent data. This has not yet been done. Therefore, the question of the method's accuracy remains open. As for ancient Egypt, we consider absolute datings of zodiacs, or horoscopes, to be fundamental. Many such zodiacs have been found in Egypt and Europe. These are ancient records or depictions of planetary positions in zodiac constellations. The dates of these zodiac events can be calculated today using computer programs. We have developed an advanced professional program for this purpose. We dated several dozen ancient Egyptian zodiacs, which are usually assigned to the distant past. However, independent dating showed that their actual dates, and, consequently, the dates of related ancient Egyptian events, fall within the 11th to 16th centuries AD. This suggests that the history of ancient Egypt actually unfolded during this period. These objective datings, which are absolute, not relative, radically contradict the hypotheses proposed by proponents of radiocarbon and thermoluminescence dating. Our results, however, can be verified, and have been verified, by anyone with an understanding of natural sciences.
What would you say to specialists who claim that you reject all dating methods simply because they don't support your theory?
No one has meaningfully challenged our methods or statistical results. Instead, our opponents tend to immediately attack our hypotheses and reconstruction of true history, even though we constantly emphasize that our reconstruction remains largely hypothetical. At the same time, we guarantee the accuracy of our calculations and the resulting dates. Moreover, they are open to verification, and anyone can repeat them, which has already been done multiple times. So, we continue to work in a challenging environment of debate surrounding the new chronology. Interestingly, some young historians support us and share intriguing facts, but they ask not to have their names mentioned, fearing negative reactions from some senior colleagues. I hope that in the near future, the new chronology will be viewed more calmly by historians, and the collaboration between mathematicians and historians, which we have long advocated, will finally take place.
Do you continue to paint?
I no longer paint. That period ended long ago, as I have many other tasks and responsibilities now. However, my final album, Mathematics, Myth, and the Master and Margarita in 199 Paintings, was recently published by the well-known publishing house, Editorial URSS. It includes 199 of my paintings, featuring my main graphic and pictorial works. Many of them have been used as illustrations in books by other authors. There have been over 100 exhibitions of my work, both in Russia and abroad. For example, in 2015, 13 of my paintings were presented at the Hyperrealism exhibition at the Tretiakov Gallery. The graphic and pictorial material I create is an attempt to photograph the world of modern mathematics from the inside. I also created a series of illustrations for Bulgakov's remarkable novel The Master and Margarita. The major publishing house AST released an edition of the novel featuring my artwork, resulting in a striking publication with Begamot the cat on the cover.